I know when it's time to go higher in the spirit, because the things that used to work, or the things that used to satisfy, no longer seems to do the job. And the confusion and frustration begins to set in because I'm not high enough. I've been in more prayer and meditation recently, and going deeper in my Bible study, saying to God, I can't stay this low. You've got to take me higher. So I think I'm going to title this podcast, Are You Willing to Accept the Invitation to Go Higher? I was thinking the other day, it's weird that I don't do many of the things that I used to do, things that used to bring me pleasure and used to bring me joy. I no longer can do those things because it doesn't glorify or honor God in my life, nor is it good for me. And I understand that everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial. But what do you do in life when you're at a stage where you don't know what to do, because you know that God is calling you higher, and you know the level that you're at now is not high enough? And how do you go higher? Is it just a simple request? So I'm just kind of talking openly with you all. I'm actually sitting on my bedroom floor. I've got my Bible open. I was concentrating on the book of Esther. And then I was listening to this powerful prayer book. I think the name is something about prayers that I think it's prayers that rout demons or something like that. Really strong prayer book that teaches you how to wage war in the spirit. And many times at night I try to go to bed either listening to a sermon or something that has to do with prayers, something that would take me higher in the spirit and that would get my soul ready for bed at night. I think that we're at a stage in life, you all, where there's so much happening, excuse me, in the spiritual realm. We've got to get serious about our prayer life, our Bible study, and our commitment with God. And maybe I should just speak for myself, because I don't get to speak for you. I know when my spirit is disturbed, and it's when I'm not high enough. And I am more determined now, I think, than any time in my life to go higher in the spirit. And what I mean by that is spend more time in Bible study. Spend a lot more time in prayer, asking God to teach me how to pray. Turning my entire home into a place of worship. I said to God last night, because I was up very late, just basically listening to gospel songs, walking around in my house, praying and worshiping God. And I said to him, I want this to be the place where you dwell. This is, let this be your dwelling place. Let my home be where there's always an open invitation, dear God, for your spirit to be. In other words, my home, really everywhere I go, not just my home, but my home is an open vessel for you, meaning that I'm going to constantly be in prayer and worship. So I'm on this little bit of a mission. I shouldn't say mission, but I'm not really into television and radio and all of that. You guys know that. I've talked about that before. I don't know if I could name any television shows, maybe one or two if I tried hard enough. And I definitely could name a radio station or any new recording artist and, famous people or whatever. Like, I wouldn't even know what to tell you because I'm just not into that. But my mission is, I really want to lift God in every area of my life, and I want to be able to help his people. And that can't be done just because you wish for it, or simply because we want it to happen. I'm realizing that there's a commitment level. Again, I'm just speaking for myself, you all. A commitment level in the spirit where I need to go a lot deeper. And for me, going a lot deeper is I literally try to make almost every waking moment of my life, of course, if I'm not, working or whatever, but almost every waking moment of my life in worship. Getting to that state, I've been there before a number of times. I wish I could say I live in that state all the time. I don't. But it's such a powerful, peaceful state to be in life when consistently in our spirit we're in worship and praise. I don't mean in some religious way, because it could be very easy to sort of turn into, just some religious person. That every word out of our mouth is, saying something religious, and sort of get into a routine of trying to impress people. Look how spiritual I am. I don't mean that. I'm talking genuine worship, because we desire to be in the presence of God. We desire to go higher. And that's just where I'm at this stage in life, that I keep telling God I'm too low. I can't stay in this realm. You got to take me higher. It's almost like a plea, but it's also like a decree of taking me higher. I don't want to go into too much detail, but I know what that looks like for me when I am higher in the spirit. I know what happens. I know what I see. I know what I feel. I know the power that comes in being in that level. I don't mean in some weird way, but I mean in terms of having a spiritual confidence. I don't know if you can combine those two words together, but that seems right to me. But having a confidence in the spirit, that what we decree and what we declare in the name of Jesus Christ, it shall be done. It's this. I can't explain it. It almost goes back to when I started this podcast about 3 years ago, not knowing anything about any of this, not even liking social media, not having a single follower. But I just remember all of those long extended times, secret times, sitting in my closet, praying to God, talking to him. I'd say 80% of the time just listening, if not 90%. Sitting in silence, looking up to him in a dark closet, pouring out my heart, fully surrendering to his will for my life. And I cannot even explain some of the visions, some of the encounters, and the way that the Holy Spirit speaks. And I think I've shared with you all a number of times when God made it so clear to me. I hope you all can hear me, because I've got these, I'm not even on my podcast mic. I'm just on my regular, whatever you call these things, that you plug in your ear when you're on your phone. So I hope you can hear me clearly. But I just remember so clearly the Spirit speaking and showing me in a vision what I need to do. And I've heard people in the past say, how do you know you're hearing from God? I think I did a podcast episode on that. You all can go back and find it either on my YouTube channel or in any of my podcast episodes. But there's an episode, I think, called How Do You Hear From God? I think that's the title I gave it. But I always know I'm hearing from him. Number one, it would never contradict the scriptures, ever. Number two, it always calls me higher. Always calls me higher. Number three, it's always, at least for me, normally something I've not thought of, or at least a unique angle that God gives me is something I've not thought of. And number four, he never lets up. When the Spirit is speaking to me, the Spirit continues to remind me, even when I try to put it aside, especially if it's something I don't want to do, right? So those are kind of the four things that are always sort of my my parameters when I'm testing to see am I really hearing from God. And I guess I should add a fifth thing onto it, because it always in some way gives glory, honor, and praise to God, and in some way serves or helps others. But I just remember, you ever have those moments where you can think through the times in life when you felt the closest to God? That's one of those moments I'm sitting here thinking about that I wish I could go into more detail, but sometimes it's not wise to share every little thing. But I just remember things I experienced in the Spirit, being in the presence of God. I'll leave it at that. And the confidence that comes from it, the peace that comes from it, the encouragement that comes from it, and the smallest moves that I make in that direction when God has made it clear that I need to do something, how He just blows on it. It's almost as if the efforts, it don't even take much to do it. First of all, you're never really fully prepared. At least I'm speaking for myself, right? Don't even know how it's going to happen. Half the time it don't even make sense, right? And you take that step in that direction, and He just blows on it. When I look back at what He's done, and I'm only using the podcast as an example. You all know, if you've been following my podcast, there's many examples I can give, right? Many. But I use that as a clear-cut example because it's something that you can easily follow the progress on. You can go back to the beginning of it and look at where it is now. And it just blows my mind that, wow, if we're willing to just sit still long enough and listen, to take this invitation from Him. You know, when we're frustrated, that's an invitation. When we're confused, that's an invitation to sit in His presence. When we're feeling lonely, that's an invitation. When we're feeling discouraged, distracted, not profitable, or feeling like there's financial pressures or strains, feeling indecisive, or, you're inconsistent with whatever. All of those are really invitations from God to sit with Him and to sit in His presence. And many times, and again, I'm just speaking for myself, we think the answers is in the outside world. But the core of the answers really is sitting in His presence and listening to what He has to say. That does not mean that there's we don't seek wisdom. You guys know I believe in that. I mean, I think mentorship is important. I think reading books is important. I think listening to experts in certain areas are important, especially when you're trying to develop systems and processes and procedures and a lot of that stuff. All of that kind of wraps up in it. But the core, the center of it all sits in that secret place in the presence of God. For those of you who have my book Necessary, you know what I'm talking about. There's a chapter called The Secret Place. I realized for myself, there's so many times I've gone after getting advice on this and that, speaking to experts and different people in different areas of my life where things don't seem to go in the way I'm hoping or praying it would go. And I always notice that I'm never really fully at rest. No matter how good the advice is someone gives me, I'm never really fully at peace with it until I get that confirmation from God. Until He makes it very clear to me, here's what you need to do. Because when I hear from God in the Spirit, I wish I could put it in words, but there's zero doubt, confusion, sometimes a little fear, because I'm like, Lord, how is this going to happen, right? But it's such a confidence that I'm able to walk in when I know that I'm walking in obedience to what He has commanded or told me to do. Kind of like when I first went and got one of my office spaces after I'd gone through a really, really, really extremely bad time in my marriage and walked away from a lot of things, and we were on the verge of, divorce, and we were just going through a difficult time at that point. And I talked about that in, I forget what chapter that is in my book. I think it's called Through the Fire. Yeah, it's called Through the Fire. Because that's where my marriage, my finances, health issues was going on. I mean, issues in family with friends. Like every area of my life was just set on fire. I talked about that. But anyway, you all already know what I'm talking about if you have my book necessary. But in that chapter, I go into detail about it. But I think about in those times when things were at its worst, I just remembered some of the things that God would tell me as I was really, I think that's the majority of the time when I was dwelling with him, like every week, every hour I can get, all through the night. Hours and hours. I literally would lose track of time, just sitting, just listening. Because many times I was just too weak to pray, to be quite honest with you. But I just remember some of the things that the Spirit would come in and do. I remember driving down the street, and I remember at that point I had like a few $100 to my name, because again, I had walked away from a lot. You guys know what I'm talking about. And it was almost like starting life all over again, right? Not knowing what I was going to do, how I was going to provide for my kid. I mean, it was just a lot happening at one time. And I remember being up at this red light and God telling me to make a right and to turn into this structure where all these businesses were at, and telling me to walk in because he had a business suite for me. And I remember being tempted to fight in the spirit, like, I don't even have enough money for one little closet, let alone these really nice suites, right? And I just remember walking in that building. I wish I could say with the full confidence. I think that's when God was really beginning to train me. So I'm not going to sit in line and say I walked in with full confidence and I'm going to walk out with a suite. I walked in with full confidence in that I know that God is having me do this for a reason. Let me see where this is going to lead. It was more so that type of confidence. And you guys already know the story. I've talked about it on several podcast episodes. The short version of it is years ago, when I walked into that building. I don't even know if I had $300-400. Like it was just, I just didn't have, But I just remember the manager at that time, showing me this really nice luxury suite. I shouldn't say luxury, that's a bit exaggerative, but very nice suite with a reception area, kitchen area, and interview rooms, like all of this stuff. Just really nice suites. And me just saying I can't afford any of this. I'm just looking really almost like a closet space. Just, do you have like a storage room, like something small where I can just get? And I remember him just looking at me and saying I can work something out. And then I just remembered, I don't know, was it the next day or so, when he called me and I went back up there thinking he's so happy, skipping into the office, because I'm thinking, oh my goodness, he must have found something like a little corner, a little something that I can get. And I just never, I don't think I'll ever in my life forget when he said something kept me up all night. Something was, I forget how he worded it, but in essence, he said something was telling him. And he's not even a religious person, and I say that with respect because I truly do like the guy. But anyway, he just said something, just kept me up and told me to, I don't know what it is, but I'm going to give you this space here. And he was referring to one of those big suites. And I was like, well, what room in here? Like, which room? I was happy to get any room. I was like, are you kidding me? Which room? Because each room still had, how you walk into a suite and it's got all these offices, but each office space has its own door. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is great. Like, which room do I get to get in here? And he's like, no, it's all yours. And I'm like, no. I don't have the money for that. I don't even have the money for just one of these rooms in here. And he says, something tells me you're going to grow into this. I don't want to go through all the details, but basically he ended up working out an unbelievable deal with me. And this was years ago. And gave me the keys. And sure enough, within a couple of months, I had not only maximized the space, but was beginning to outgrow it. And I think about, this is making me think about, so that experience I don't think will ever leave me, because if I was operating in my own spirit, or what is the word I'm looking for? You guys got to bear with me because I'm just sitting here just talking. I wasn't even going to record this, but I'm literally just recording my thoughts out loud, just so you know. So I think I'm going to still post this as a podcast, but you just listen to me think out loud because I'm sitting here in prayer and reading. But it sticks with me because it was one of those defining moments when I thought, I guess this is really real, that God really does direct us if we're willing to just completely pour ourselves out to him and let him figure it out. I never in a million years, just so you know, would have walked into that space knowing I didn't have anything, didn't have the credit, didn't have whatever, trying to talk to somebody about getting something. Now, if I had a pocket full of money, I would have, but I would not have done that. And that was just one. That was just one. You can find my podcast episode. I think it's called My Testimony. It may be a part one and a part two. I can't remember. But I go into more detail about that story and several other stories of where God just blew me away with telling me to do something that I didn't think was possible. I was reading in Esther, chapter 6. And there's a part in here where, remember Haman was going to have Mordecai killed. He actually had some gallows built because Haman just didn't like Mordecai. Mordecai wouldn't, I can't remember, but like honoring him or, paying honor to him, Mordecai wouldn't kneel down or pay any kind of honor. You can read chapter 3 in Esther about that. He just didn't like the man. But last night I kept repeating over and over and over again chapter 6 because this is when Haman basically was just going to ask for the king's permission to have him killed on the gallows that morning. And in any situation, King, I think it's Xerxes, would have just honored it with no problem. He didn't have any type of loyalty to Mordecai of any kind, at least not at that time. But in chapter 6, verse 1, what was so amazing is this is when after King Esther had requested, to the king to have a banquet and this and that. But check out chapter 6, verse 1. It says, that night the king could not sleep. So he ordered the book of the Chronicles, the record of his reign, to be brought in and read to him. It was found recorded there that Mordecai had exposed Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's officers who guarded the doorway, who had conspired to assassinate King Xerxes. Listen to verse 3. What honor and recognition has Mordecai received for this? The king asked. Nothing has been done for him, his attendants answered. The king said, who is in the court? Now, before I go on to read anymore, I kid you not, I kept repeating this over and over and over again last night because I really believe with all my heart, mind, body, and soul, when we read our scriptures, there's a backdrop to the story. Everything, this is me, I'm just giving you my take on this. I'm not a licensed minister, but I'm discovering everything reveals Jesus Christ. Everything, there's like a hidden backdrop. If you look at my Bible now, these pages are so marked up you can barely even read it because I've highlighted it over and over with different colors. Everything is a hidden, behind the pages. I can't explain it. It's just in my spirit. Christ is revealed. The ways of God is revealed. So I look at someone who refused to bow down. I look at someone who life was threatened. He was in trouble. They were going to be getting rid of all of the Jews. And Queen Esther, of course, was going before the king to, basically ask for help or whatever. But when I look in verse 6 and it says, that night the king could not sleep. Why couldn't he sleep? And it's showing me what was in my spirit last night is God does not sleep or stupor. Like he's not, sometimes we think he's not aware of, what's going on in our lives, or, man, God, I've been working hard for so many years, or I've been trying my best. I know I'm not perfect, but I've been doing my best to try to honor you in my life and try to magnify you in everything that I do. And sometimes you can be in that mode and you feel like but man, why is it still so hard for me? Why is it, when are things going to turn around in my life or what have you? Sometimes you can be tempted to feel that. And when I look at this passage, it encourages me so much to see that night the king could not sleep. And it's almost like it's a backdrop of God saying, I see you. I know of your efforts. And though it may feel as if nothing or little has been done for you, or that you've been rewarded for all your efforts, the time will come. I am the lifter of man. I am the rewarder. And so when I saw this, and it says, and again, I'm in Esther chapter 6, verse 1, that night the king could not sleep. So he ordered the book of the Chronicles. But what made him do that very night, the night before Mordecai was going to be killed? You get my point? It's as if God is showing us I'm always on time. It's as if God is showing us I'm able to work through people, through whoever I want, to have my good expected end happen in your life. And so when I saw that night the king could not sleep, and I'm like, oh my God. And of course I thought about the situation, the story I just told when I was trying to go in there and, get an office building and didn't have hardly anything to my name. And I never forget, and that literally is what the manager said. He said, something just kept me up through the night. And I just thought, oh my God, how sweet that is to my soul. That night the king could not sleep. God is able to move and work through anyone to get his expected end. And then it goes on to talk about he ordered the book of the Chronicles, the record of his reign. So as he was reviewing through the book of the Chronicles, he came upon the story about Mordecai exposing these two men who tried to assassinate him. And here's verse 3, what really, I just kept saying this over and over in my spirit. He said, what honor and recognition has Mordecai received for this? You get that backdrop? Now, I know we're talking about King Xerxes, but the way that I read scriptures, and again, I'm not a licensed minister. This is just the way God speaks to me. I see Christ revealed in everything. I see God. I see the nature of God revealed. And when I read that, it just comforts my heart that he's saying what honor has been given to him. So in other words, what has been done for him for the good he has done? And then they say nothing's been done. And then you can go on to read the rest of the story. He basically, the very person who was coming to get permission to have him killed is the very person that had to put the king's royal robe on him, have him be on the king's horse, and walk him through the city, down the street, proclaiming this is what is done for the man who the king delights to honor. So the very haters, the very people who conspired against him, are the very ones who were forced to show him honor. Think about that. Mordecai riding through the town with the robe and on the horse, the one who was supposed to be slain, is the one that God honored before everyone. Doesn't that remind you also of Jesus if you think about it? Riding in on a donkey. You see what I mean? Like those backdrop stories. So I can relate that, wow, that reminds me of the story of Jesus. Then I can relate it to me like, wow, that reminds me of times in my life where I feel like, God, do you see me? Anyway, I'm just talking. I think my heart right now is just being melted like butter right now. Because I'm asking God to show me him in everything that I do. I'm asking him to take me higher. I'm asking him, I'm decreeing and declaring, God, I can't stay at this level any longer. You've got to take me higher where I belong. That's what I keep saying to him. And I've been saying that even for a while now, especially recently and all through the night. You got to take me higher where I belong. I can't stay at this level. I got to go higher in my praise and worship, higher in my prayer, higher in my spirit. Examine my heart, see if there's any offensive way in me. Search me and show me what doesn't smell like you, what doesn't look like you. Look at the way that I run my business. Is there something you don't like? Am I off track? How do I put you first? How do I honor and help your people? I'm completely surrendered. Change whatever you want to do. I'm open. But you got to take me higher. I can't stay at this level any longer. This doesn't work anymore. Got to go higher, because higher is where I belong. So I pray that whatever stage you are at, whatever you're going through, that there's something in you that desires to go higher. And my question is, same question I'm asking myself, are you willing to accept the invitation? So instead of looking at life as frustrations, looking at what's not working, every single thing that you feel is not working or not looking like it's honoring God in your life, or representing God, I should say, are you willing to look at that as an invitation to go higher? Because it really is an invite. So I've accepted the invite. I've accepted. And right now in the spirit, I'm getting dressed and getting ready. And I'm asking God to take me higher. So I don't even know what to tell you to expect from my podcast moving forward. All I've got to tell you is I am asking God to set me on fire like he's never done before. Let me be his representation. You got to take me higher. Wherever you want to take me, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to change, just go ahead. It's all yours. And I've also been thanking God for writing his book, Necessary, through me, because it truly, truly, truly is his book. That's a whole nother subject. But when I think about the book Necessary, I am so moved in my spirit. I literally read the chapters just like you all read it, as though I didn't even write it, because a lot of the stuff in there, I'm like, oh my God, this is deep. Oh, that's right, God did lead me to that passage. Oh my goodness, this is so helpful. So it's almost as if I'm reading it for the first time. And I thank God, thank you for using me to write this book through me, because it really wasn't me that wrote it, it was you, God. Thank you for shaping and using my life to even write it. Now what do you want me to do? What do you want from me? Take me higher, because higher is where I belong. Turn my home into your place of worship. Let my prayer life, my worship, everything that I do be taken to such a higher level that I'm stripped of my pride. I'm stripped of me. Take me above my fears. Take me above my concerns. Take me above my wants and the things that I think I have in mind and how my life should go. Take me above it and show me what it is that glorifies you and what do you want. So that's what I'm praying for. That's my intention in my heart right now, is I am accepting your invitation to go higher. So anyway, I'm just talking to you guys. I love you all. I pray that this has been helpful. This is Z with Unlocking Greatness Podcast.